All right, if we have a manually operated one, well, that would be operated, as I explained, with the pilot-operated push-pull cable. So pilot-operated push-pull cable. Or, I should say or, because that in right there, interconnected. Interconnected to the throttle. So when you move the throttle, you move the wastegate at the same time, one lever. So, yeah, I'll show you a picture. Manual systems. Use a pressure relief valve in the upper deck. You have a turbo on your car? Who has got the turbo? Your Prius doesn't have one?
Not anymore. Not anymore.
You're talking about 2005?
No, it doesn't.
My poor little thing, I tried checking that up. Freeze grade? Towards the center.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, never again.
Really? I would have thought the electric motor would have really...
It's not that strong. I had that thing floored, and I'm just crawling along, and everybody else behind me is just like...
Pissed off.
Yeah, pissed off. Trying to get this big old
Screw
grace.
this Prius driver.
I had to give her a few breaks going up that thing.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking this...
Oh, I mean, if you offer.
Where do you live again? Somebody said you live in Tracy.
If you offer.
Oh, so you are by me.
Yeah, I'm south of you.
Okay.
He's like, hey, you want some?
So you're way down the freeway by the time I leave here. Anyway, the reason why I was asking that, you have pop-off valves on your cars?
Blow-off valves, yeah.
Blow off.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you hear them at all, or?
Some of the nicer ones, yeah.
It's more aftermarket.
Yeah, aftermarket ones,
The
yeah.
soft ones don't give you that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, all the aftermarket ones are really nice though.
Some of the EcoBoost Mustangs.
Some of the EcoBoost.
I drove a car. It was so loud, I thought I blew the thing up. Yeah, it was loud. It was a Ferrari California. But
Yeah.
hey, let me take it out for a drive. Did I tell you that? So
No,
my
Go ahead.
Your
wasting your
Ferrari,
time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, my son was hanging out with these people, Westlake Ferrari,
Oh.
when he lived in Malibu, and he's like, "Come on, Dad, down, Dad." And so we went to this like meetup thing with all these Ferraris, and he did the flag and parked all the exotic cars. I was walking around and stuff, and he's hanging with them, and he goes, "Can you stay here? I gotta go talk to this lady for a minute by myself." And I'm like, I don't care. So he goes, talks to her, and then they come walking back to me, and she goes, "Hold out your hand." She dropped the keys in my hand. She goes, "You can take that." I'm like, really? It was pretty sweet.
Where's the exit?
That's what we did, yeah. So, yeah, took it for a drive. And I put it in manual. I jumped on it. I mean, it had the tachometer across the steering wheel.
Oh,
And I just remember thinking, because what did I have? I had the E500 maybe, and I could paddle shift that, or it was down here. You can keep up with that. And so I tried that in the California. Oh, it went so fast. And you hit the rev limiter and at the same time. Yeah, and then the thing starts popping off. But it did that in like half a second. I'm like, wow.
Very small flywheel on that thing. It's going to be just...
Yeah, I
And
was
it
like...
shifts really freaking fast too.
Oh, yeah, I put it back in. Man, it's
Yeah.
like, this thing's smarter than I'm shifting. But when those things popped off, it it scared me. I'm like, I just bought this car and I don't... So... Okay, so that made me think. Manual systems use a pressure relief valve in the upper deck because guys like me get in there and they don't know what's going on. So to keep pressure, upper deck, to keep pressure from exceeding set limits.
Does it not use the wastegate because that would be too slow?
Okay, so right now we're talking about the manually operated system. And so in the manually operating system, you're not going to have independent controllers to override and adjust the wastegate. So you are doing it on your own, so to speak. So either either we have this manually controlled system. I like how they put like a little faucet valve here. So it's little, just like the one on the fuel pump tester. Yeah, look, it's red handle and everything. So if we look at this, it's a very simplistic system, but we've already talked about it. So compressor comes in. So we've got this upper deck pressure right here with this pressure relief valve, which is normally going to be closed. And then it's going to come through here, but we have the manual wastegate, which I was going to say, I don't know what this is floating around over here for, but let's just imagine that that's controlled by a pilot push-pull control in the cockpit. So, my scenario where I was talking about, the pilot adjusted the upper deck pressure to the max manifold, takes his feet off the brakes, and we start rolling down the runway. Well, let's just say that maybe he didn't do that procedure, and he just kind of set it where he thought he wanted it, and then firewalled it, and we take off, and that thing just goes to overboost. Well, it will probably overboost for a short period of time, but then this pressure relief is going to pop off and relieve that pressure, kind of like we could call it an idiot pressure relief valve if we wanted to. So it's like an idiot light, or what's the word I'm looking for? But anyway, it keeps you from blowing up the engine because you exceeded it. But under normal circumstances, you're expected to be running the manual wastegate. But should you screw up, you've got at least one fail-safe right here. Yeah.
Do you normally see the pilot-operated one or the connected to the throttle?
Fully automatic. We normally see fully automatic.
Okay.
This, like I said, I've only seen one plane like that. I don't know if I've ever seen one like this. Okay, or here is another way that we could do a completely manual one.
So you don't normally see manually operated wastegates ever.
I don't. And maybe if you go to Alaska, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's all we have. I don't know.
Yeah.
So no, it's can't go off my experience on this around here. But right, so this right here is they're showing an interconnect. So it'd be one controller, two cables that go out. So you as the dumb pilot, remember I can say that because I'm one. As you push in the throttle, you're going to push the throttle and then push against the wastegate at the same time. So not to say you're going to open the wastegate at the same time, but you'll push on it, and that would kind of be the interconnect, so that when think it through at wide open throttle, you'd want more air pressure, and I would imagine you'd want the wastegate mostly closed so that you're running through and you're getting the turbo, be adjusted like that. And then I would imagine, I don't know this for a fact, that at the same time there'd be rigging instructions so that you would rig it so when the throttle is wide open, that your wastegate's going to be in a certain position, you're going to pull it back, so you'd want to check all that. But in this particular system, you can see how it would be really easy to overboost it because you have no control as the pilot on what's going on. If you were to be too rapid with the throttle, then you're going to have some sort of pop-off valve. So there you are, pressure relief valve. So we're going to kind of look for that in most of the systems. They're in most systems as that safety device right there. And I don't know this system as much. I don't think so, but I know in the other systems, it's really normally closed and only like the last kind of resort. It's like everything has sort of failed us, and this protects us from overboosting the engine. Because, in a car, if you overboost it, when you overboost an aircraft engine, then you have to go to the service instruction and you have to read about overboost and what kind of overboost you got, and depending on what you did could be the difference between flying it again and buying a new engine.
Like overspeed?
Yep, exactly.
What was it? Overspeed?
Like overspeed.
Oh.
So you're going to look at how far you overboosted it for how long, what you're going to do, and so it can get really, really pricey.
I like a hot start.
Yeah. All right.
Momentarily.
Or oil controlled, or automatic, I could guess. Oil controlled. One uses a piston operated wastegate. oil pressure is fed to a piston at all times. Oil pressure is fed to piston. I'm just going to leave it at that. Yeah, piston at all times. That'll make more sense in a little bit. So it's not like you turn the oil on, you turn it off. We're going to have a constant supply of oil. We're going to control that constant supply of oil. As pressure builds, wastegate closes.
Oil pressure, or
As oil pressure builds, wastegate closes. And that is turbo on. Like a switch. When it's closed, it's on. So as wastegate closes, you get the exhaust does not get wasted. It goes up to the turbo comes on. Which, just to keep our minds flowing here, means when I'm sitting there on the ground with the engine off, what position would the wastegate have to be? Open. So as I start up the engine, I've got to build up oil pressure to go through, start pushing on the piston. It's going to start closing. So it's going to take a little while. When oil pressure is bled off, wastegate opens. Which is turbo off. The position of the wastegate is variable. Position of the wastegate is variable. Meaning it's not a binary. It's not open or close. It's like a throttle. And you're like, what's a throttle? Wait, did we talk about throttles? So it's like a throttle. It's
I have the thing in the back of your throat.
yeah, it's a thing. Throttle. That's exactly it. Gosh. All right, wastegate. Wastegate is never fully closed or fully opened. Wow, you went through the whole notebook?
Yeah.
Wow. Never fully closed or fully open. If it is fully closed, fully closed is turbo on or off. Okay. It could coke. Right? What is coking?
Good time.
Depends on the state you're in.
At 300 degrees C or 575 F. Remember what oil coking is? Okay, it's when it turns into that hard crystal stuff. So, yes, we're talking a lot of heat around here. So we don't want that to do that. So, I don't know.
Would that be buildup or corrosion?
Build up. And then it can start blocking passages. Let me see. Okay, this is why cool down is important. This is why cool down.
Jeez, the code's at 575 and the exhaust is what?
15, 1600. Can't let it sit there. So the oil can't get that hot.
cool down.
But if you keep it moving, it's only there for a brief moment of time and it won't get that hot. If it is fully open, the turbine doesn't turn. I imagine it actually would turn. They say that, but you have incoming ram air that's going to hit against the turbine wheel, which should spin it and keep it going. But yeah, this is what they say here. So fully open, turbine does not turn and is unevenly heated. Unevenly heated, causing stresses and cracks. All right, so there's your three systems. Let's get into detail. Well, I pretty much already did detail on the fixed, so we can just move right across that. You gonna be all right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Big yawn. I'm very tired today. Yeah.
Should I make it more interesting?
No.
Yes.
You're doing just great.
Well, I just get stuff and throw it at you, that's all.
Yeah. Where's
You
the,
dodge a
where's
wrench,
the
you
bag of
dodge a
Skittles?
ball.
Keep forgetting them. All right, automatic systems. Wouldn't it be nice if there was just one automatic system? But nope, there's different. Light combing. Let's talk about light combing systems first. And there are many. And then we have to talk about Continental. And there are many. So settle in.
I don't want to.
All right.
You have to.
So, no, you don't. All right, obviously we're going to use the same basic components through all of these. So uses same basic components. And the basic components would be the turbocharger, the wastegate, and then let's see, turbocharger 1, 2, 3, and then it will use one of 3 systems. Now, full disclosure here, this is going to get slightly confusing as to, wait a minute, is that like system 1, 2, and 3? But now you're talking about this, but that doesn't match 1, 2, and 3. There's no way I've seen all of the engines out there, and even Lycoming themselves with their turbo publications and all of their stuff, when you read through it, it doesn't really differentiate well between, oh, this is that system, this is this. And the reason why it gets that way is because you have basic systems, and then you have airframe manufacturers who can customize it. And go, oh, we like system 1, but we want that controller, right? And they can do that. So you can actually find airplanes that don't match like 1, 2, or 3, that they're kind of a hybrid of different stuff, and that's because that's what the airframe manufacturer asked out of Lycoming. So you can run into different stuff. But the idea is if you can identify at least the basics of how it works and what each controller is, then it gives you the opportunity to start troubleshooting. Well, if it does this, then that should be that controller. Or if it does this, that's more likely that controller. Because what happens is if you don't understand these systems, then what people do, like any system, is you just start throwing parts at it. You know, it's just, and that's what people do. I remember, one time I was working on turbocharged, was it a Baron? I love those planes. Yeah, P Baron. And turbocharged, pressurized. It was a sweet airplane. And, you know, guy was flying along at some high altitude and heard somewhat of an explosion. And pressure just, cabin pressure just fell off, you know. And so he had to, do his descent and stuff like that. Brings in the shop. I got this, every single person. Well, it's your controller. It's your controller. And in fact, I just gotten done with citations school. And I remember in citation school, we ended up doing some thing about pressurization on, in general. And the guy kept saying, everybody who does pressurization work, whenever they get into a pressurization problem, they pull out the controller and send it in. You know, and he said, and honestly, they never fail. It's like so rare that they ever fail. These pressurization controller people, they're making a killing overhauling perfectly good pressurized. So, you know, pulls in the shop and every mechanic's like, well, I just pull out the pressure controller and send it in. I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that because I just heard this, you know. And so rather than throw parts at it, yeah, it was funny. I mean, I went through this whole plane trying to figure it out, checked all the switches and everything. You know, we'd take it out, run it with an altimeter, you know, and I was sitting in the back by this is, I guess, off the topic, but anyway, off the outflow valves, you know, okay, pressurize, you come up and your ears would pop, and okay, depressurize. It made me sick, really, but anyway, it's funny, and man, I found so much wrong with this airplane. It's like, because it has O-rings around all of the inspection panels, O-rings on all the screws that go in there. It's like half of them were missing, and so, you know, I fixed all this stuff. I'm like, I still don't see a smoking gun. It was kind of weird, and but I got it, so it actually worked fine. And I on the ground, the guy took a flying. He's like, yeah, it actually works, not quite like it used to, but almost. And like, well, I'm kind of stuck, you know, and you want to send in the controller? No, I don't want to send in the controller. Anyway, I flew it for, I don't know, a few weeks and brought it in for an annual anyway. We opened it up for the annual. It was a boot that was on a rod that went to, one of the landing gears popped off is what it was. And I just didn't catch that. But it was funny that I found so many problems all over the airplane that I actually got it to work with that boot off. So it worked real well after that. So anyway, so there's this tendency, especially when we have twin engine aircraft, is you have a parts store in the other wing. And so, you know, sometimes that's good troubleshooting. You can swap parts back and forth till the trouble goes to the other engine, but you don't always have that luxury. So understanding it can keep you from screwing it up more. All right, 3 types of controllers. The differential and density. Differential pressure control. We'll talk about what each one of these are. And density control. B, the variable pressure control. And the slope controller. And we'll start by talking about the light combing. And honestly, they're simple little things. They really are. You guys are going to be able just to look at it and almost figure out how it works just by the pictures. Light combing differential / density system. This is used on the TIO 540 Alpha 2 Alpha, used on the Piper Navajo. I'll write this stuff. Used on TIO. What's TIO? Turbo injected opposed. 540 Alpha 2 Alpha on the Piper Navajo. Piper Navajo. It is, because this is interesting, sea level boosted by 10 inches. So what am I going up to for manifold pressure? 40. Is this a turbo normalized or turbo boosted? Okay. Has a critical altitude. Of 19,000 feet, if it's working correctly. What does that mean?
That's where it drops below.
That's where you see above sea
It
level.
starts dropping off at 19,000.
Okay, so I'm going to have sea level, so I get 30 inches basically all the way up to 19,000. So what happens after 19,000?
Starts going down just a little bit.
So can I go past 19?
Yeah.
Okay, just means you're going to have less than sea level. Which everybody else that normally aspirated, they lost their sea level power at 2 feet. So, all right, 310 horsepower. I have 290 without turbo. which doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to remember that's at sea level. So you don't have a whole lot more power at sea level, but you're going to carry that 310 horsepower.
All the way up to 19,000.
Not quite, because you have air, hot air and stuff. But for the most part, yeah.
300 horsepower.
Yeah. All right.
Is that a 2A or a ZA?
Alpha 2 alpha. They don't do alpha Z alpha. That's just ridiculous.
Remember.
Yeah, you gotta do the line.
That would be it. No, that'd be a Z.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That would be a.
That's all.
Wow, my grandma's never done it that way. So. All right, done that one. We've done that one. Lycoming density differential control system. I have this big slide, which means that if you're looking at it online, you can't see it all, but you're not missing much. All right, so let's dissect this a little bit here. We're going to lose Tobias, man.
Yeah.
Okay, where do you want to start? Right here.
Okay.
Exhaust comes out through here, goes to the Y. Because it does. Why do you guys keep asking? Okay, so we've got the wastegate controller. Wastegate, when the wastegate is closed, that means that it goes across the turbine wheel and out, so closed. All right, so we've got then everything looks about the same. Air comes in here, pressurized, goes through here. We have upper deck, then we have manifold pressure and in. Okay, so everything's normal, right?
No.
Well, okay, now we're going to look at this other stuff, what's going on here. So, engine oil pressure inlet. So first thing we're going to notice is here's where the engine oil is coming off of the engine and it's going right to the wastegate,
Piston. Little piston.
to the piston. All right, so we talked about if this is blocked, oil pressure will build up and
Force it closed.
close it. All right, so there's your secret right there. All we got to do is close this off, and we get more turbo. Bleed it, we get less.
Yep.
All right, so spoiler alert, that's all these things are doing. All the controllers are just going to bleed off oil or block it. Bleed or block. That's their whole job. But it's how they do it, which is not that big a deal, that we'll look at.
Oh, we got a diaphragm.
All right, so we got diaphragms?
We got a diaphragm.
Got a diaphragm. All right, so this is a differential pressure controller. As the name says, it is the
Differential.
difference between two things. All right, what are the two things it's a difference of?
Inlet pressure.
Manifold and upper deck. All right, we're going to talk about why in a little bit. So that's it. So this is difference between manifold and upper deck. If it gets to be too much, it is going to open up a valve and bleed off. All right, easy enough.
Kind of like a pressure car.
Yeah, but easier. Density controller. All right, it is going to measure
Density.
the density of the air in
The
upper deck. If the density gets too great, because it wouldn't make sense if the density is too low, if the density gets too great, meaning your manifold pressure, well, it wouldn't be manifold because we're down here, meaning your upper deck is too high, which you're not monitoring, then it is going to open up a valve and
Bleed off that oil.
bleed off the oil.
Which would drop the oil pressure in the piston.
And open the valve.
Open the valve
Okay, are these in series or parallel?
parallel.
Okay, why is that?
No, they're not independent.
They're not independent, yeah.
Or
Because if they were in series, then one would open, but nothing would happen until the next one opened.
they are independent.
So they're completely independent. One can open and override the other one. So, pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
Really,
That's really easy.
okay, it doesn't have to get much harder than this.
We didn't lose Tobias.
I know, he was
I'm still
actually
here.
engaged. All right. So let's talk about, let me see. Okay, let's talk about each one. So the density controller. And this can be one of those things, honestly, it's just, we just build on it just a little bit. They just change things a little bit, but for the most part, that's what you're looking at. Density controller. So it's designed to sense the density of air after. I'm going to go back to the picture because maybe that'll help. Density controller right here. Designed to sense density of air after it passes the compressor before the throttle. So that's deck or upper deck pressure. I always say upper deck. Some people do say deck. Its job is to provide the quantity of air necessary for full power operation. You know, my little notes, I'm like, I don't know if I want to say this, write it, but I'll say it. Regardless of engine damage, so to speak. Because if you kind of look, but yeah, let me think. Never mind. Yeah, I wrote, don't say that. Now I know why. I remember. All right, so its job is to provide the quantity of air necessary for full power operation. So as long as you're getting full power operation, it's happy, it's closed. Only designed to meter during full power operation. So once we get, and the reason why I can say that is because if I'm at idle, where do you think this is going to be, open or closed?
Closed.
Yeah, we need more.
As closed as it can get.
Yeah, so if I want, like I said, this is off the Navajo, if I want 40 inches here, I'm idling and I'm at 18 inches or something, it's got to have to be
More.
closed. It's ordering more. I want more turbo. Because remember, it doesn't know anything about anything except what's happening in this blue area. It doesn't know engine speed. It doesn't know altitude. It's just looking at blue. And if I say this is supposed to open up at 40 inches, it's going to be closed until it gets to 40 inches. And when it gets to 40 inches, it go, oh, okay, that's enough here. Yeah, enough of this business. All right. During less than full power, during less than full power.
So cruise speed.
Let me make sure I transition this one out. Okay, so this one is only going to operate at full power because it's always ordering max power.
Max throttle.
Yes. No, it's always ordering max power. Max upper deck. That's his job. You see that? Max upper deck. All right. The problem with that is, and the problem with turbos, and I know you guys know about turbo lag, but there's a problem with turbo sensitivity. And what happens is when you have a massive amount of pressure right here, and you're blocking it with just a single little valve, very small movements of that valve equate to very large changes. And then you get this problem of surging and hunting, and we're going to get in bootstrapping. Bootstrapping from the term, lift yourself by your own bootstraps. I kind of hate that term, but we'll talk about it. So it becomes extremely sensitive and starts hunting. And so if you have a lot of pressure right here, let's say you can get your 40 PSI out of it, 40 inches, and you've got the throttle at a certain position, and you want to increase your manifold pressure by an inch, you start to move it forward by an inch, and as you're moving it, that air is going to come rushing in, and you're probably going to shoot past your inch a little bit. Well, when it shoots past there, now you're going to create more power here, which is going to create more exhaust, which is going to speed up the turbocharger, which is going to compound that problem. So now you're going to have to pull back on it. Now you're pulled back further than where you were a minute ago before you wanted more. Close this off too much, and then everything shuts down, then this starts spooling down a little bit over here, and then you're undershot, and so you're going to keep this hunting going for infinity. Yeah.
Did they have, like you had on, or have on your mixture control, like the vernier scales? Did they have that for like?
This is an automatic system.
Well,
Oh, it's
saying
for the
like-
throttle?
Like the throttle.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
of course. But a lot of planes have quadrants.
Yeah.
They don't have veneers. It's this. So you're kind of hunting, and they have two of them. And so, yeah, you got a lot going on there. So a veneer wouldn't really help.
Yeah.
Right? So you go back and forth, back and forth. Well, that's where the differential pressure controller can really help. Because while this idiot's over here just saying more power, this one over here is going, now wait a minute. Let's be reasonable about this. All right? You're over here with your manifold pressure, and you're only asking for 18 inches of manifold pressure. Well, why should I give you 40 inches over here? If you only want 18, how about I just give you 20 on the other side over here? Huh? Is that enough? It's negotiating, right? So you follow? Yeah, I was gonna. Sorry, I just watched a clip came up when I was doing something earlier. It was My Cousin Vinny. You guys know I love that movie. Yeah, because he's an attorney. And the guy was going to kick his ass. He goes, I need my $200. He says, how about I kick your ass? That's a counter offer. That's what we call in my business a counter offer. So this is going back and forth. They had a counter offer here. Want 40. How about I give you 18? All right, so that's where the differential pressure controller comes in. So that limits this gigantic spread between the two, which really calms everything down. You know what I'm not seeing, though, is a pressure relief valve. But okay. Wastegate's right there. All right, so, well, this guy's over here saying more power, more power. This is over here saying, yeah, but we're kind of like at cruise over here. So let's be reasonable, and you've got more than enough, so you can go ahead and block off the oil all you want, but I'm going to open up my passage and bleed off some oil, and guess what I'm going to do?
I'm gonna close that.
Bleed off some oil,
Open it up.
so it starts opening back up, which means more exhaust goes this way than it does across the turbine wheel, so the turbine's going to slow down, and it
Dropping
kept
the
that,
pressure.
huh?
Dropping the pressure.
Dropping the pressure and keeping it more reasonable. It's so simple.
What's the orifice on the top of the dipstick draw?
Here?
That's another oil?
Yeah, that's a cap. That's a return. It's blocked off right now. Let me see. Maybe I have another slide where it's not. I think I have like a whole series of these slides. I just didn't put them in here because it's redundant.
Is there a spring in that piston that is keeping it off when the oil pressure is not pushing?
In the wastegate,
Yeah.
it's right here. There you go, right there. So one spring going one way, one spring going the other. There's a spring right there. All right, got that? Let's write about it. Density controller. Designed to sense density of air after it passes compressor before the throttle. So designed, we could abbreviate that. Designed to sense upper deck pressure. And like I said, I forgot until I looked at my notes. I think Lycoming just says deck pressure. Because really there's no lower deck. But could be. Its job is to provide the quantity of air necessary for full power operation. It is only designed to meter during full power operation. Only designed to meter during full power operation. And like I said, the reason why I say that is because its job is to give you full power.
40 pounds.
Yeah, in this case, the 40 inches. So it's only going to meter all the way up at full power. Otherwise, it's just not going to get a chance to do its job
It just stays closed.
because of this one. During less than full power, the differential controller will operate the wastegate. Density controller is measured by two items. Controller, I should say measures two items. What do you suppose those two items are?
And
The density controller.
density.
upper
Not a
deck
differential,
oil pressure.
density controller.
Upper deck and oil pressure.
It does not measure oil pressure, does not care.
Upper deck.
Upper deck and.
What is it measuring in the upper deck?
Air.
Air.
Just
The weight
Air
of
density.
The way they're gonna see that.
Air, okay, air pressure.
Air pressure and air density.
Well, how would it measure density?
By how much is coming in.
Doesn't really have impact tubes or venturi or anything.
Okay.
Air pressure and it's density.
pressure?
What are the two things that make up density?
Massive
Mass,
volume.
mass and volume.
Okay, so so as a pilot, I decided I'm going to bring my airplane over to here
Bottle.
and stop in on Saturday and give some rides, right? Which, by the way, were you guys here when I did that?
No.
And not one
No,
person stuck
We
around.
were here and then Larry kicked us out.
Yeah, Larry kicked us out.
So, like,
We were
well,
gonna
Oh, yeah, you could have just stayed. I showed up. But all right, so so I come and it's kind of a hot day. Do I have some concerns about putting a bunch of fat people in the airplane?
Yeah.
Okay, what are my concerns?
Lift.
Density, altitude?
Density of air.
Okay, the density of air. Well, I know that my altitude here is only 75 feet, so should that ever be a concern? What about
The,
What?
The hotter it is, the less density.
the hotter it is, the less denser it is? So what do you suppose is another function of
Temperature.
temperature? Okay.
That's what I said just now.
Yeah, I know, just now.
Active, like, you said, yeah.
But he did say it, so. Even though you said it like 5 minutes ago. All right, temperature. Let's see. So uses a bellows filled with nitrogen that is in the airstream. Uses a bellows. Do I need to write potato chip bag? Filled with nitrogen. They should have used butane, right?
Yeah,
It's a little lighter fluid.
it is.
With nitrogen
Um,
that is in the airstream.
Do they use the nitrogen in the bellows as well on all the pressure carbs, or is that
Just air.
just air?
No, I believe it's nitrogen. I think some of them use helium.
No.
I'm not totally sure, but we'll just go with
Lighter?
nitrogen. Huh?
They weigh less?
Yeah, that makes the whole carburetor lighter. Yeah. It's in the airstream. There we go. Lost my place. Nope, that was it. Okay. Movement of the bellows will either bleed off oil from wastegate or block. So movement of the bellows will either block oil or bleed off. So if it blocks the oil, that would be wastegate
On.
closed.
Close.
If it bleeds off, it'll be open.
Turbo off.
Which would be closed, which would be on, this would be off. You guys have seen the picture about the person looking for the 710 to put in there,
The 710.
the 710 to add in your car. How do I do it?
Oh, yes.
If I turn it around, it would look like that.
Oh.
Yes. I need more 710.
Wondered, I'm surprised I didn't. What did I miss? I was here yesterday.
That's all right. Just talking sorry so you can finish writing this and catch up to me. I told you about needing oxygen for my airplane, went to the dive shop. I actually asked if they had any NO oil in stock. And the guy's like, huh? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, we don't usually use oil on oxygen fittings. I go, it says right on there to use NO oil. It's like, huh? I'm like, right there it says, use.
Oh, no.
So I need some NO oil.
Oh, no.
You must have found that really funny.
Did you really do that? Oh.
Yeah, sense of humor is like, oh, huh? I'm like, it's a joke. Don't worry about it. It's not a thing. It's just like, okay.
So you were able to fill your oxygen tanks for your airplane at scuba.
Yes, for very low cost.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to have their stuff
Yeah.
certified as well
Yeah.
because you're
just
down
different
there.
certification.
That's getting.
I used to scuba dive a long time ago. I mean, when I was 16, I got my license. And so things have changed so much. And I told him that. I haven't dove, since basically I got the Navy. And I'm like, well, why would you have oxygen? He's like, he's like, oh, I'm so glad you asked. And he just went into all their mixes and how they're doing stuff now. And thought it's pretty cool.
Insane. what
Yeah.
they do.
So as temp increase, it's time to go, huh?
Yeah, it's about-
That's a good place
Finish
to
this
go.
point.
All right. Well, it's a long point. As temp.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long point. We'll do this tomorrow.
Yeah.
As temp.